call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, August 9th, 2016. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Mr. Councilman Riley Bettis, if he would please, to lead us in a pledge of allegiance, and then, if you will, remain standing for an invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a prayer that actually came from the First Baptist Church bulletin that struck me as pertinent. It's written by Reverend Peter Marshall, the Elder Marshall, who was twice chaplain of the U.S. Senate. He was an immigrant from Scotland, and he was ordained as a Presbyterian minister here in 1931. His prayers in the Senate were known for their honest concern for the basic virtues of honesty, integrity, and goodness of an individual, as well as a profound love for his adopted country, America. It's called A Prayer for Our Country. Let us pray. Lord, God of heaven, who hath so lavishly blessed this land, make us thy people to be humble. Keep us ever aware that the good things we enjoy have come from thee, that thou didst lend them to us. Impress upon our smugness the knowledge that we are not owners, but stewards. Remind us, lest we become filled with conceit, that one day a reckoning will be required for us. Sanctify our love of country, that our boasting may be turned into humility, and our pride into a ministry to people everywhere. Help us to make this God's own country by living like God's own people. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I thank you for joining us this evening. If you had a difficult time finding a parking place, we have several events going on this evening, including an event that is sponsored and being held by Live Well Greenville, an organization that works to improve the quality of life through improving people's health, that is located here in the upstate. They do an annual event called the Park Hop. It's an opportunity for families to go out and visit one of the 19 different parks in Greenville County. Gives children an opportunity to register during those visits. If you visit a certain number, your name goes in a drawing for the grand prize. If you get a few or more down, it's a different prize level, and so forth. And so they are meeting next door as we speak. It's getting ready to wrap up just here shortly. But earlier in the evening, we had a number of people here. It obviously would have been held outside had the weather cooperated, but fortunately we were able to bring it inside. And so want to give a shout out to those folks with Live Well Greenville and the Park Hop. Our Parks and Recreation Department obviously was working very closely with them on that particular project, and so I would urge you to, even though you can't join in Park Hop right now, to visit some of the various different parks located in Greenville County. With that, then, we'll move on to the public forum section of the meeting tonight. Public forum is an opportunity for us to allow the citizens of the city who have standing to come before the council to bring matters to our attention that may be of importance to you or to give opinion on in that regard. We ask that your comments be directed to the items at hand, and that they be done in a timely fashion to give consideration to all those who wish to speak. This evening we have three folks that wish to speak, all three in regards to Hillside Drive, an item that we will be discussing a little bit later in the meeting this evening. What I would like to do is recognize you in the order in which you have signed up. Once I call your name, if you will come to the podium, state your name and address simply for the record. The floor is yours. And with that, Mr. James Moon is the first one to speak this evening.
the mayor said, I'm James Roger Moon, and I've lived in Greer for 63 years. Saw a lot of changes, a lot of improvements, and saw a lot of things happening, and saw a lot of growth. And being as old as I am, I remember a time when 101 didn't have a traffic light or a stop sign above it. And to make the improvements that they did, they made a lot of improvement. Stopped a lot of traffic on Highway 101. That being said, I don't see any kind of safety. If it would be to the safety of the community, it'd be a benefit to the community to close the road off or close that hillside drive where you turn into it off of 101. Blocking that, I couldn't see anything that would help the community or help the safety of the people traveling in that area. Especially with Aldi and Rite Aid and the other business in that, my own business in that particular area too. I know many times traffic backs up to where you can't get through the intersections anywhere there. And I'd just like to see more studies done on the safety of that particular area with the traffic flow. And so before the road's actually blocked off, I'd like to have a lot more discussion and more studies and see if there's alternate ways of doing it rather than blocking the road. And again, I thank y'all for letting me speak.
Appreciate it, sir. Mr. Chip Radford.
Mayor, Council, my name's Chip Radford. I live on Blue Ridge Drive. Moved there in 1989, which is in Burgess Hills, which is where Hillside Drive is located. I'd like to speak that I'm not in favor of closing off Hillside Drive. I did not know Blue Ridge Drive was going to become a dead end until it became a dead end. Probably 70% of the time I came and left on Blue Ridge Drive. I don't know what I heard it was kind of state pushed, but I don't know what DOT saw at that intersection, but coming and going there for 25 years, there was never a problem with that intersection at Blue Ridge Drive and O'Neill. And having done architectural design work for over 20 years, anytime I've gone to a seminar, conference, or talk planning about neighborhood planning, one of the key problems they discuss over the past 30 years is neighborhoods have one entrance and one exit. And what that does is it concentrates traffic onto certain roads and increases congestion, frustration, and deteriorates air quality. Also see closing off Hillside as a safety issue. When public safety needs to reach us, I think having more than one option is a good thing. Also, if you're on Wade Hampton wanting to turn left, now I mostly come and go on Hillside Drive. If you're on Wade Hampton wanting to turn left onto O'Neill to take a right onto Hillside, to me it's much safer to do that because I'm in control. When I find a gap, I can turn. If I have to go down to Rite Aid and Aldi, I'm at the mercy of my capabilities as a driver, sneaking out into the intersection as waiting for the light to turn yellow so I can turn in the intermediate time frame. So that brings DOT into the factor. And then it also brings interpretation, people coming toward Greenville and when they decide the light turn yellow or not. Aldi opening up has increased a lot of traffic in that area. And my neighbors on Chestnut and Hillside are unfortunately the victims of that newfound path. But I would like to have some studies done and see what happens when, now that the highway construction is completed, and to see if any of the traffic decreases. The light at Mount Vernon, which we would be coming in and out on the Wade Hampton, could be up to 2 minutes long at certain times of the day. I thought about pausing for 2 minutes and just standing here to let you see how that feels, but I won't. And one of the things, if you close off Hillside Drive, it feels like multiple neighborhoods would become victims to being concentrated to go on Wade Hampton because and we have skin in the game versus people who tend to cut through. And I think the reason that people cut through is they don't want to mess with the mess that is Wade Hampton, and you would force the people who actually live in the neighborhood to have to mess with the mess, which is Wade Hampton. So on solutions, I ask that you really please study the issue and find out how many people possibly are actually cutting through versus how many are just anxious to get home. I know traffic humps can be also a deterrent to slow people down. And then also there's speed monitoring signs like that's on Poinsett now. And there's all these signs now that I see in other areas like drive like your kids live here. Speed humps and studies I know cost money. I would be in favor of putting an officer or two around that area. I think a couple actually live in the neighborhood and writing some tickets and maybe raise a little money to help pay for these studies. And lastly, please, before any decisions are made, if you would let all the neighborhoods in that area know and give them the option to express their opinion. I did know Blue Ridge Drive was going to be closed off. I'm in favor of Blue Ridge Drive being opened back up. But please, put notices in the mailbox, send out letters so everybody has a chance and there are no surprises. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brian Stokes.
My name is Brian Stokes. I have lived at the corner of Chestnut Avenue in Mount Vernon for 40 years, and I have watched that area grow just like a lot of you folks have too. I am in favor of closing Hillside. Like Chip, I didn't realize that Blue Ridge was going to be closed until they closed it. Closing Hillside would inconvenience me just as much as it would anyone else, but I think I'm still in favor of it because I really don't see the hazard of entering into Wade Hampton with a red light down there at Aldis and Rite Aid. I think, to me, it's much more hazard trying to enter up onto 101 off of that street up there that comes out of Hillside. That's a trouble spot. But I had voiced a concern when they started building Aldis to Lee Dubas about us maybe having some speed bumps there at the corner of Chestnut and Mount Vernon, or a three-way stop sign. Currently there's a yield sign there, but I can promise you very few people ever yield to the yield sign. And quite frankly, I probably wouldn't either, because if you look good to the left, you can see 300 yards up through there, so they usually just slow down to about 30, when they go through there. But I would love to see something done, and I don't know exactly what, but I am in favor of closing Hillside, because I think what it would do is it would force people to utilize Mount Vernon more, and they would either go out to is it Memorial Drive on that end, or they would go out there at Aldis to Wade Hampton. And it would kind of quieten the neighborhood down a little bit like it used to be, a quiet neighborhood. But currently, everybody's using that for a shortcut to go either, I don't know where they're going. As a matter of fact, I don't know where all them people going up 101 every day when they, it's at 5 o'clock. I don't know where they live in Travis Rest or Asheville or where, but I mean, it's bumper to bumper. But I would just be in favor of closing Hillside. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Council, contained in your packet are the minutes from the MAP Council meeting on July the 26th. I'll entertain a motion that they be received.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, this evening we have a special recognition. I'm not sure that Bobby James has been able to join us this evening. I don't see him here. We will hold this recognition to later in the meeting, if indeed he gets an opportunity to slip in. We'll recognize Mr. James in his retirement, but for now, I hate to do it in his absence, so we'll move on. With that, then, we'll move to the administrator's report. Mr. Driggers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Several items to report to you this evening. One of those is on, or some of those are on activities that we have completed over the summer. I want to make you aware of a few of those items. Our police department completed 3 of our youth camps this summer, all of those at capacity, and very, very glad we were able to fill each of those. Our fire department, you may be aware, is engaging in a Citizens Fire Academy. We have filled all of the slots, so we're at full capacity on that program and are looking for ways that we can offer that again in the future or be able to expand that as we move forward. There seems to be more interest than we had a number of slots, and that's a good thing, but it's always nice to be able to accommodate everyone who likes to participate. So we're going to try to figure that one out, but we are at capacity at this point. Our camps concluded for our summer camp program for our recreation department. We averaged throughout the summer 140 youth at our 2 summer camp programs, and that stayed full for us through the summer as well. Our recreation department was also involved in our what we refer to as our back-to-school bash. That is our preparation for our students going back to school, make sure that they've got supplies and backpacks and those types of things. We had over 1,000 of our local children come and participate in that back-to-school bash program. Consider that to be very successful. It has been good for us over the years as we've continued to sponsor and support that program as well. Many of you joined us here in the park for National Night Out. Great turnout, great exposure from our community. Each of our local media outlets were able to be on site with us and do some interviews as part of that program. We decided to do that here as a community event this year versus in a specific neighborhood. We found that to be extremely successful, maybe a consideration for us as we continue to move forward. We would like to get feedback from each of you as we consider that for next year as well. But we thought that it was very successful, good turnout for us last week for National Night Out. We followed that week as well. On Friday of this past week, we had our first food truck rollout. We had 4 food trucks and entertainment here on the grounds at City Park. A couple of our vendors ran out of food, and that's a good indicator that they were successful. So they are asking us to be able to repeat that event, and we are certainly making plans now to be able to do that. So a very successful inaugural event for our food truck rollout. Glad to be able to host that this past week. A couple of our construction projects, to give you an update, we're moving forward on our Century Park Kids Planet area, but there at Century Park, down at the baseball fields. That construction project is moving very, very well. We're a little ahead of schedule, but then the rains came. But right now we are still a little bit ahead of schedule, and that project is moving very, very well for us. Our folks in the Recreation Department are continuing to manage that and are keeping a close eye on that project as we continue to move forward. Our auditorium property, the phase 1 of that project is complete. We have received applications for our artist spaces there, and those are being reviewed now. And so we're anticipating being able to make notification to our artists that will be moving into that facility, and we're even hopeful that they'll actually be able to move in a little early. We intended for them to be able to move in on September 1st, and we believe that we'll be able to beat that by a couple of weeks as we start to get folks into that building next week. We will be coming back to do a bit more of a grand opening of that facility in October. We do want to allow the artists an opportunity to get in, get set up, get some of their displays set up as well, but we do look forward to introducing the Art Center to our community as we continue to move forward with that project. September the 10th, it will be a new event for us, but one that I think we certainly would all recognize as a community. We are referring to it as Rail Fest. and that will be taking place here at City Park. That is on Saturday, September the 10th. We believe that the history of the railroads is paramount to us as a community, but as they are still operating railroads today, we know that it is also important that we communicate with our community about the safety of those railroads as well. We think that we're accurate that we have 25 at-grade crossings inside the city limits of Greer. And we want to make sure that we are emphasizing the safety of those at-grade crossings, as well as celebrating the history and the heritage of the railroads to our community. So Rail Fest will be taking place here on Saturday, September the 10th. It will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is a free event here at City Park. So looking forward to that event coming and taking place here as well. Gosh, so many of those things. Allen Bennett Memorial Hospital, you know that we have released our request for proposals on that project. We are receiving good inquiry on that project. Applications, submittals are due to us by October the 4th. So we are looking forward to receiving those. As you are aware, Council will receive those as potential economic development projects. They will be reviewed in executive session, but we are anticipating for the completion and the closeout of those by October the 4th, and we'll be scheduling that shortly thereafter. We've been very fortunate recently to be the recipients of a couple of awards. I announced to you earlier that we have received awards for safety and risk management from our insurance provider, both in risk management for property and liability insurance and also for workers' compensation. Those folks will be coming on site for the morning of our employee safety breakfast, and they will be recognizing the efforts of our employees and providing a little additional amenity to that event that will be taking place. We also this past were recognized by the American Heart Association as a fit workplace, receiving the Fit Workplace Award. We partner, obviously, with our folks with Live Well Greenville, with events like the Park Hop Tonight, very successful in that event. And then most recently, we've been notified to be the recipient of a national award. I'm going to ask Mr. Sill if he will provide some additional information on our preparation for that award, and then also to share with you some information that we submitted for that. What we have received from the National Research Center, NRC, is an award called the 2016 Voice of the People Award for Transformation in Foundations of Livability. Reading from our press release tonight, the Voice of the People Awards is the only honor given to local government that is based on community opinion. So our community surveys, National Research Center does about 500 of these nationwide. And so based on the results of those, we were named as three national finalists. We were asked to submit documentation on that program for us on livability. We did submit that, and we have been awarded the national award, again, the 2016 Voice of the People Award for Transformation and Foundations of Livability. Mr. Sell, additional information that you would like to provide on that and to share our submission with the community on receiving that award.
Council will recall that we had previously conducted a citizen survey back in 2011, 2012 timeframe. Followed that up a few years later with the survey in 2004, fiscal year 2016. The results of that second survey was reported during the council retreat back in February, and we shared results with the public since then as well. One of the things that the National Research Center makes note of in these is that they do an annual comparison with other jurisdictions to see how those jurisdictions that perform surveys over multiple periods, how they transform or change from one period to the other. And they have several categories that they look at. As you know, are aware, the surveys broke down into safety, economic development, community involvement, things like that. There was an overall category called transformations and livability, which take a look at all of those areas. And what it does is, for us, in looking at the improvement from the previous survey period to the current survey period, it was found that we exceeded the other jurisdictions that we were compared with, which is about 500 nationwide. One of the other things that stood out to them is the way that we approached that. As you are well aware, we incorporated many of the measurements into our strategic plan as outcome measures. Those outcome measures are pretty much what we take a look at and how we perform in the policies, processes, tasks that we do on a regular basis to achieve the goals for sense of community, overall quality of the community, how you feel in your neighborhood, how safe your neighborhood is. What we found is that in every overall category that we surveyed, we saw multiple digit increases on many of them, some single, but all of them improved. And it was due to the work that we did in the strategic plan, and that stood out for them as well. So because of that, all that factored into them awarding us the overall achievement for out of the 3 finalists that were selected to receive the national award. So we're very proud of it. I think that we can be proud of it as a staff, as a council, and definitely as a community, because it is a partnership in what we do. In submitting our application, we want to highlight that partnership. So I'd like to just take a couple minutes. It's just a 2-minute video, and this video was submitted with the application for this award.
This is Greer, South Carolina. Take a look around and you'll see a community built around families and friends. You'll find a vibrant business community and industries that keep the local economy strong. You'll see programs and activities that contribute to a high quality of life and a community that never forgets its past while always looking toward the future. Take a look around Greer and you'll see a community that has planned wisely for the future.
So many cities, they spend the money and they work on a project and then they don't upkeep it and they don't continue to get citizen input and feedback. And Greer is not like that at all.
Rapid growth followed BMW's opening of its North American headquarters and led to the creation of the Public-Private Partnership for Tomorrow. That organization commissioned Greer's first community master plan that revitalized the Central Business District and created a new city hall, police and court complex, and city park. Future improvements would also be driven by members of the community. The National Citizen Survey in 2011 identified recycling and connectivity as key issues. Both were addressed as priorities. A follow-up survey in 2015 showed that residents were highly pleased with safety and their quality of life. Areas identified for improvement, such as walking and biking trails, an arts district, parks and open space, and key transportation corridors, were largely identified in the second Greer Community Master Plan. Once again, it was an engaged community that helped produce the plan in 2015 through online surveys, community workshops, and the Plan Greer website.
We've needed to be able to involve all of these folks in this planning process. And I think that's been one of the great successes of this process, where we've been able to get, we believe, through literally thousands of responses that we've received through this process of what our community would like to see Greer become as we continue to grow over the next 15 years and beyond.
During the ICMA annual conference this year, we'll get our hardware, so hopefully I'll be bringing that back, and we'll be able to display it with the other awards that Mr. Greer mentioned and the other things that we have as well. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Council?
Very impressive film. Very good.
Self-produced on our own budget.
No.
Steve Owens, our community
I know.
manager, always does a good job.
Does a great job,
He did
yeah.
a good job with it. They actually, in their comment response back, they mentioned that they were impressed with our videos. So.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, also consideration of council tonight in executive session for 2 matters. One is a personnel and one is an economic development.
Thank you, sir. Council, with the conclusion of the report, we'll move to items of old business, the first of which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 23-2016. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Randy Vaughn and Donna Davis located on Westmoreland Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of R7.5 for said property. Mr. Pace is not with us this evening. I will assume there's no additional or new information to come from staff at this point. Is that correct?
No new or additional information. Everything that took place at the Planning Commission is contained within the minutes that you have in your package. Do want to note, though, that the consideration that the Planning Commission made in consultation with and in agreement with the developer is that that property would be zoned R10. So the Planning Commission took action on it as R10, and we would be asking council's consideration to amend for second reading the 7.5 to R10.
Thank you, sir. Upon the recommendation of staff, I'll entertain a motion to accept the second and final reading of ordinance number 23-2016, amended to the classification of R10.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Hearing none, Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, item B is the second and final reading of ordinance number 24-2016, an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Sherry Sudduth, Scott Satterfield, Casey Satterfield, and Cody Satterfield located at 612 Westmoreland Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of R7.5 for said property. I will assume that the same recommendation holds true.
Yes, sir. This is a complementary annexation to the prior piece, and we would have the same recommendation to amend from first reading at 7.5 to R10. And this was approved by the Planning Commission.
Council, on the second and final reading of ordinance number 24-2016, I'll entertain a motion to receive if amended to classification of R10.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Hearing none, Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council will move to items of new business this evening. I don't believe Mr. James has joined us, or I don't see him at this point. We're sorry that he is unable to make it this evening, but I would like to recognize Mr. Bobby James. We had for him this evening, and we'll get to him a certificate of appreciation as well as a gift from the city to congratulate him upon his retirement from the city of Greer. This is presented in appreciation of 29 years of dedicated service with the city of Greer from October 2nd, 1986 to August 4th, 2016. This certificate of appreciation would have been presented to Bobby James and given on the 9th day of August here in Greer, South Carolina. We will make sure that Mr. James gets both this and his gift. Thank you, Shift, for joining us this evening, and others that had come to congratulate Mr. James upon his retirement. We'll move to the only item of new business this evening, which is a request from Councilman Dumas regarding traffic concerns on Hillside Drive. This matter has obviously come before us. We did take some time for some internal discussion in regards to proceeding, and out of that, staff has gathered some information, but still lacks maybe final directive from council about how we might wish to proceed, or to at least reinvigorate that discussion in regards to how we might proceed. And so, as Mr. Sell has apparently made his way there to the podium, I will assume that there is some information that he may want to present to council, and then we will. Well, since you have the map at the request of Mr. Dumas, I will let the Councilman Dumas open the floor then for discussion.
Councilman Dumas forgot his laser pointer tonight. Does anybody have one?
No.
Go up to the board.
I basically put the map up so I could, we keep using a lot of different languages to where we are on the map, and and we keep kind of talking about what's actually impacted. Mr. Holliday pointed out and had a group of petitioners come before us, I guess at one of our last meetings, and talked about the challenges that our neighborhood's now facing with Aldi popping up on the corner and the traffic flow. There's no curb cut anymore on 29, and so folks are exiting Aldi and then also the back way out of Culver's and cutting across on Chestnut and then taking a quick left on Hillside. And as Mr. Radford pointed out, Blue Ridge Drive used to capture a good bit of that traffic. And I'm not exactly sure what motivated DOT to get involved in this project when they widened the road out on North Buncombe and they decided to close off Blue Ridge Drive. It may be, and I think we can look back, when folks used to come up Mount Vernon, they used to hang a left, and we had a no left turn sign on Chestnut. And I've found out that that was not enforceable, correct? So we decided not to put that back, and I'm guessing that some of that feedback came from DOT, because when they came to us originally, and many of you came to the Cannon Center, there was a public forum well attended by many members in the community in our neighborhood specifically, and they had two alternatives. They said, we're going to take Blue Ridge Drive, and we're going to take O'Neill, and we're going to merge those two and create a cul-de-sac. That was option one. Option two, we're going to take O'Neill Road and make that a right turn only. So if you're coming from Blue Ridge towards Greer, you couldn't take a left off of North Buncombe onto O'Neill. And I guess through the process and the feedback from the folks in our neighborhood and the community, they decided to scrap both of those and just allow O'Neill to stay open. And in that process, they decided to close. Oh, yes, you were the man. And in that process, they decided to close. I'm shooting myself in the eye, I think. So just to give you a bearing, I'm doing a whole lot of talking. I believe this is the Aldi site here, and here is the intersection of Mount Vernon. And this quick left there is Chestnut, and this is Hillside Drive, and this is the intersection that's in discussion tonight, where we're talking about several of the residents have petitioned us to close it. And that's basically why I put it on the agenda. If we have a lot of my neighbors that are concerned about this intersection, something needs to be done. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm not a traffic expert, and I think what's interesting is when they had the initial discussions about the intersection, which was up here, which I was talking about. Where did my clicker go? I'm sorry. There it is. The intersection here, which was O'Neill and Blue Ridge, when those two are going to merge, that was a very different scenario when Aldi wasn't down here. Now that Aldi's here, you have a lot more traffic here, and it's also being compounded on Mount Vernon by a lot of the folks that learned that that was a great cut through when the bridge was out on Memorial Drive. And you remember how long that bridge was out and how long it took? Everybody remembers that. And we got all of that traffic coming down Mount Vernon, and I think a lot of them is kind of stuck with that pattern. That's right. It's definitely a habit now. And so, to Mr. Radford's point, that's one of my concerns with this intersection. If we go down the road of closing Hillside off, then that funnels all of the traffic from Burgess Hills down to Mount Vernon to exit here. And then you also don't have the ability to enter the neighborhood off of 29. This is not a really friendly intersection traveling from Spartanburg to Greenville. And you have to take a left at this intersection. You really are taking your life in your own hands. I mean, it's scary. I saw...
You mean you said you don't have the ability to enter off the way down?
I said it's a challenge.
Oh, it's a challenge.
When you're turning right there between Aldi and the Rite Aid, and you're taking a left on the Mount Vernon, it can be a scary proposition. Number one, there's not a lot of depth with the turning lane, so only one or two cars can really stack in there neatly to take a left. So you'd be kind of in the suicide lane there just to take a left. And then Dunkin' Donuts has popped up across the street, making that intersection even more hairy with O'Neill. And so those cars are pulling out there trying to go, towards Greenville. And then you've got cars that would be jammed into that intersection on 29 trying to take a left. So I guess what I'm saying is there are so many moving parts.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
There are so many moving parts with this call to action that I think, and I'd like to get council's opinion on this as well, and I heard some of the folks that spoke tonight, and thank you for coming and saying your piece. It's a big help to us. I think what I heard is that we really need a little more study, and we really need to find out what needs to change and who is going to be impacted, and to consider all of the moving parts, because we really have to consider not just Burgess Hills, but you have Mount Vernon, and then even on the backside of that, Belmont Heights, that's going to be impacted by this.
Who has responsibility for O'Neill Road? Is that a county road or a state road, or?
I talked to our city engineer this afternoon, Mr. Grant, and he told me that DOT is responsible for O'Neill.
We may recall that O'Neill used to be Highway 290-101. And then that was, we petitioned SCDOT to move that to the signalized intersection some, 10, 12 years ago or so. And they did do that, but it is still under the jurisdiction and maintenance of SCDOT.
Well, I would certainly agree with further study, especially, and it was pointed out now that the construction there has been completed. If it has, I haven't been up that way lately, but if it has been completed, then, I know that in just traveling up Buncombe to Highway 29 there without going across, you could see how drastic and heavy the traffic was. So hopefully with all the construction work done, then that would eliminate some of that, and then perhaps with the widening of the road and all, it will cause the traffic to flow better coming out too. So I know with the widening and the changing of the lights and things like that, and possibly that will help everybody. So.
I know on Friday, I think it was Friday, I went to the Rite Aid over there, and there was 8 cars, and I parked to the side. If you come in, there's the pharmacy, so I parked to the side just to look at the traffic that was there, and it was 8 vehicles coming out of the Aldi's parking lot, and 4 of us were getting ready to come out, and I went like about 4:30, 5 o'clock. There's 4 of us coming out of the Rite Aid, and about 8 cars in the line in Rite Aid to come out, and as they started getting frustrated, they definitely went straight up that road. It's like 4 of them that turned and went straight that way. And I spoke to Lee about this before, I used to cut through there, so I was definitely one of those people that they were probably upset with, because I went right through the neighborhood because it was easier than to sit and wait for the Wade Hampton traffic. But I do see the concerns from both sides, so I don't know exactly what all we could do to eliminate some of that traffic, but it's definitely
have been done? What actual studies have been done?
We had the police department put a speed monitor on Chestnut. I believe it was a few months back, and we basically were able to kind of count the traffic and the speeds, and really, I don't see that there's a huge concern based on my observation with the speed and based on the findings of our study. It's not a speed thing, it's a volume thing. There's just a lot more traffic coming in and out of this road now, and what, I was kind of waiting to see what would happen when Buncombe fully opened back up with the suicide lane so you can take a quick left. I'll keep trying to point to this. Right in here is what I'm talking about, this intersection. People are coming from Taylor's Peach Shed coming back towards Greer, and then they're making a very fast left because now they have a suicide lane, they can get out of traffic. Before, they wouldn't make a lot of turns because they would block everybody going north, and so that prohibited them from making a quick turn. Now they can jump in that suicide lane, get out of traffic, make a quick left up O'Neill, and then to avoid going down to that bad intersection across from Dunkin' Donuts, they'll just take a quick left on Hillside and then a right on Chestnut and go flying down through there.
One other concern, that Culver's is open, people are coming up the side, all of this, and it's creating a 5th point of entry right there. And I've noticed from my front porch, a lot of them, they don't really know which way to go when traffic is coming out from 4 other directions.
He's talking about right here, this is the Culver site, and then this is the Aldi site, and, even to Ms. Booker's point, and what Mr. Stokes is pointing out here, is that this is the curb cut, and where folks are trying to take a left back towards 29, there's no room. I mean, cars are already backed up into here, so they just naturally flow to the back, and then, well, the path of least resistance is just to go straight up Chestnut here, and then to make a left on Hillside, and then a right and go north, or they come down here and then, go back to 29 this way. And it's just...
Well, it seems to me that if you close Hillside, that's really going to be a problem then.
And to Mr. Radford's point, what it's going to do is concentrate traffic right here on Mount Vernon. Everybody from the neighborhood is going to come down to, these 2 points here and then cram up right there. And yeah, so all the traffic coming out of Aldi and the back way out of Culver's are going to be stuck along with the people coming out of, Rite Aid, which is on this corner, and then, again, everybody from the neighborhood and everybody from the neighborhoods above us, Mount Vernon and Belmont Heights are up there.
Well, Rite Aid has an escape route.
Belmont Heights has a back way to get out as well, that you can back through from that Taylor's Road. But we live on the hillside, and speed is an issue. My little girl cannot even go out of the driveway. I can't go out of the driveway. Cars are flying off the road now, and they're flying down off Chestnut. By the time they get to the four-way at Chestnut and go left our road, they're flying, they're going to stop at the stop signs either way, and they're just flying out. Our road right there is the reason the original petition began, because there's so much traffic and it's so dangerous. On Saturday, we can pay attention more to the traffic, and over 400 cars came through our end on Saturday. So there is a traffic issue there and a safety issue. And it is not, we did not bring the petition originally for Chestnut. It does affect Chestnut. But Hillside Drive is very unsafe at that corner. We don't qualify for speed bumps according to the city specifications for speed bumps, because we're too close to both stop signs.
Well, whether it's done in-house or we hire someone to do it, it seems to me we need some good engineering information about just what exactly is going on in that entire area, and then some suggestions on whether to close it down or just do some bump outs or humps or whatever to make it a less not quite a good way to go anymore for most of the traffic.
I appreciate the public feedback, but this is not the time or place for it. We're in a discussion at the council level, and so I thank you for your input, but we'll limit that at this point in time. I think one of the important things that we've got to realize is the limitations that we have in terms of how we deal with this problem, because I think part of what we're going to run into here is that if we start making decisions about traffic or traffic issues, which we're even prevented from doing or should be prevented from doing in terms of zoning issues and some other things that we deal with, I think we run the risk of every community that has a cut-through street on it is going to be coming here wanting some sort of relief. And I know that on my street, you can cut down my street, cut around to both the stoplights downtown and come out on the other side of North Main and avoid the stoplights completely. And so we're seeing more and more traffic that is doing that, and I think it's an issue that we're going to face. The other thing is I'm a bit concerned about taking such a surgical approach to this, because actually I'm quite pleased that you brought this map, because looking at this from actually the 30,000-foot view gives us some idea here that we've really got to take some sort of holistic approach to this, because just doing one thing compounds the issue in another place. And it's amazing, as heavily as 29 has traveled and as we feel it's developed right there, if you look at a map from this height and you look at that area there between the two roads at 290 and 101, and then on the other side of 101, it gives you a bit of perspective that there is room for a lot more development in that area right there, which I think could be problematic in the long run. I would suggest that anything that we do in combination with the roads or in regard to the roads there, Chestnut and Hillside and Blue Ridge, that we also have at least some conversation with the state about some of the other roads there in that area as well, before any decision would be made. I quite honestly think this may be one of those issues where even if we do have a study that we would lean to a recommendation from staff before we made any decisions. Speaking of staff, any insight in terms of how we might proceed and what might be available to us in terms of seeking some additional help and how we address this? I know we've got very qualified people on our staff, but again, it's not something they do every day or may even have time to spend a lot of time on the research. So.
We think there may be a couple of approaches to this. One is we would like to have our PD go back out and look at the numbers. Let's determine what type of volume are we getting. Has the volume increased since the construction has stopped, or has it subsided? Is it decreased? We just need to know. Let's let the data give us some information about what is actually occurring out there. And we certainly can do that. We can monitor the traffic to determine rates of speed. We can determine the volume of traffic. We can determine the time of day that volume is coming through. So compiling the data is certainly something that we can internally do. While we do have a professional engineer on our staff, his expertise is not in traffic engineering, and so we would need to seek some additional advice in that area. One of the avenues that may be available to us would be to formally make a request of SCDOT. They kind of help create this situation, and it may be an appropriate request by us to ask them to do a traffic analysis, a traffic study of the area to determine if the recommendations that they've made and the actions that they have taken are indeed in the best interest of the traveling public. And I think that's what SCDOT is going to take a look at. Their issue will not necessarily be as concentrated on livability and neighborhoods and as they will be looking at the passage of vehicles on those streets and the volume of vehicles on those streets. A third avenue for us certainly could be that we would go to a private traffic engineer, and there are folks in our area that do that. We request traffic studies from development all the time. So every time, or many times when a project is coming to you through your planning commission, those folks have had traffic impact studies done to determine what would be necessary for the impact of that new traffic. So that certainly is an avenue available to us as well. So again, internally, some things that we can take a look at, request from the state of South Carolina to help us. They certainly have those types of people on their staff, and they have the ability to do that, certainly. And then, of course, there are third-party private engineering firms that would do that as well. Staff would be prepared to do, at council's direction, what you would ask of us to do.
Scope of that work is the price is determined by the scope of the work that's done. So
and we would probably be able to save some money just by us doing the counts, because that would eliminate the traffic engineer from having to physically go and do the counts and set up the equipment to do the counts. So it could very well be that we could assist in reducing that cost by providing that data ourselves. But yes, it would be defined by the scope of the project, and then a recommendation for remedy. And I think, obviously, the risk in a traffic impact study, a traffic analysis, is that you can get a multitude of recommendations, and then it's a matter of evaluating impact and cost to those as well.
I'd be in favor of having staff get some recommendations and some pricing parameters for having a traffic engineer take a look at that, and hopefully we could coordinate that work with with the state possibly, or figure out a way to have them participate in the study directly, one or the other.
I think clearly we need more information. Just for clarity's sake, have we had, in your time serving here, have we had any other roads that have been negatively impacted by something that wasn't anticipated, like a like a grocery store on a corner, and, I mean, has there ever been a scenario where the city kind of intervened like this and closed a road, to your knowledge?
Not to my immediate knowledge. There certainly has been impact by development citywide, and I would imagine that does indeed exist, but I'm not recognizing what that is right now. So, but we can ask that question, and we can take a look at where we've had it. Of course, the situation that we have here is impact to an existing neighborhood by two things. And one, when SCDOT did the public hearing and their impact study for their work at O'Neill and Buncombe and their decision to close Blue Ridge, Aldi did not exist and Culver's did not exist. And so that scenario in itself wasn't a factor to even be considered in how that could impact. So I think we've got a situation that we've got two separate issues that have both confounded this issue. And obviously, and it is causing some concern. For a resident that lives on that street, if indeed that traffic count is 400 vehicles in a day, and a year ago or 2 years ago you were getting a fourth of that, obviously the impact is significant and noticeable. To DOT standards, I don't know that they would come back and say that that is an excessive volume on a vehicular street. To a neighbor, I think that observation would be, yes, that's an excessive number of vehicles on a street that did not have that before. So I just think we have a number of issues that are actually going on here. I think the good thing in looking at it from a traffic analysis, from a traffic impact perspective, is that what we would ask of a traffic engineer is to give us alternatives. What are the alternatives that may be available? And I'm certain there would be things that we're not even imagining at this point, that they would say, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. There could be some temporary measures, and we've done that in some places in the city, where we've installed temporary measures to determine if it has impact. Speed humps is an example where we've put in temporary speed humps to determine, pre and post putting in those, did we impact the volume of traffic or the speed of traffic? Because if we're not going to reduce the volume or slow vehicles down, then to do that measure is of no benefit, and it's just an expense associated with it. So obviously, what we want to do is we want to make a decision that has positive impact to the community. And to the mayor's point earlier, this is that symbolic situation where it's like a water balloon. No matter which side we press on, it's going to go to another side. And I think that's the concern that's here, is that to solve one problem may create another. And that has to be weighed, obviously, by you folks.
Make a motion.
Well, then I would like to make a motion that we engage a traffic engineer to study this intersection and help us to weigh the options of what it looks like to squeeze that balloon.
Second?
Have a motion and a second in regards to, let's say a traffic study for that area as opposed to that intersection. Would that be-
Sure,
would that
absolutely.
be-
That'd probably be a better.
Rather than the traffic.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion for that area, because there, Mr. Driggers, to your point, there's a lot of things that have changed. I mean, even from this picture, you can see that those were, that was the, well, I don't know, that might actually be when Ford was still there, but it's definitely a lot more volume now that you have people coming and going from a grocery store versus a car dealership. Right. It was different then. You had people test driving cars in the neighborhood sporadically, but this is This is a whole different animal.
I would even include Blue Ridge Drive in that study to see, like you say, it's a while since that was decided.
I think we would really want to take a look at anything that is entering to the north at the intersection of Wade Hampton Boulevard and Mount Vernon, anything that is entering there and the impact that is occurring north, and then that which would be entering and exiting on O'Neill, as well as anything that would be coming from the north from Memorial Drive. What is happening in that area based on where traffic is coming from and where it's going and the volumes and the speeds? Because ultimately what I'm hearing you is that it's a safety concern. And so we want to address it as a safety measure, not necessarily as as moving the vehicles. We know the vehicles can move. That's being demonstrated. I think what we're hearing is that it's the safety of the folks that are coming and going and that live in that area.
Got a motion and a second in regards to engaging services to help us or assist us with a traffic impact study for the area in question there. Any further discussion? Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we've got two matters for executive session, one a personnel matter and one an economic development matter. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin? Yes. Ms. Booker? Yes. Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Albert? Sorry. Mr. Bettis? Ms. Albert? Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, in executive session, we considered two items, a personnel matter and an economic development matter. We've taken no action in regards to either of those items. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn from executive session?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Ms. Adams?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Stand adjourned.